In the previous lecture, we explored adding links that takes you to the different web pages. Now we are going to work with anchor tags. Anchor tags allow us to link to specific area of content on our existing page. Let's take a look at an example. On this page, you notice we have a table of contents at the top of the page that lists 5 articles. Article 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. The idea is to have these items linked to their corresponding article on the same page. So if I click on article 3 or for example, you will notice that the page navigates to the beginning of the third article in our content area, and the same goes for article 4 and so on and so forth. In order to make this work, we need to set an anchor that will instruct the text links on the position of the article that correspond to the link. We have including a file called Anchors.html in the downloads folder corresponding to this lecture. You need to open the file in your text editor in order to follow along with this tutorial. So here we have the source code for the file, and in order to make this work we have also to go ahead and add a few anchors on all the 5 articles heading. To add the anchor, locate the article heading and insert the following code. You will notice that we are using a tag within the IT attributes. Later on in this tutorial, we are going to link to each one of these anchors from our table of the contents. So once we have inserted your first name to anchor, you need to insert the other in the front of the other article heading. So just copy this block of code and paste it in the front of each article heading. Remember to make sure you change the number of the articles so it corresponds to the correct article headings. Now that we have inserted the name anchors, we will need to link to them from our table of contents. So let's scroll up to the table of contents and add the following code around each article heading. You will notice we are using the 8 tags with the RH RCF attributes. One difference is that we have a no sign in the front of the link. The no sign instructs the browser not to divert the user to a new web page when the link is clicked. When the no sign is followed by an anchor name, the page will note a search for the anchor name on the existing page. It will then retrieve the content that is defined by anchor position. So again, let's copy this block of code and create our link for the additional article headings. Once again, remember to change the number so it corresponds to the correct article heading. So once you have added all your links, save the file and preview the page in your web browser to make sure that everything works. So now we can see that each item in the table of content does have a link attached to it. Let's just confirm that it does work. So article 1, article 2, article 3 and article 4 and 5 so on. In this lecture, we are going to creating tables using HTML when it's come to building web pages. It's very important to have a solid understanding of table structure. Table allows to organize the data and content in an organized way. Table data is structured in the form of rows and columns. The intersection of a row with the column form a table cell. The individual cell contains the actual data. Data can be in the form of text, images or even video content. This example illustrates the structure of a basic table used to record the finding of a survey that asks respondents to link their favorite sport. Here we have a table with the 2 columns in the 9 row, which give us 18 individual cells. Let's start off by creating this table in a standard HTML5 document. For this you need to open your text editor, and we also need to set up the basic HTML page structure as we learned in an earlier lesson. So once you have the basic HTML page structure created, go ahead and save your file anywhere on your computer and save the file table not.html. Make sure to put the HTML extension at the end. By now this should all look familiar, and as you probably guessed, the code block for your table will be inserted between the body, the open and close body types. We will begin by adding on our own open and close table tags. The table tags also have the several attributes. First, you can specify the width of the table. For now, we will put the which is 100%. We will come back to with our triple ones. So we have our table created because there are different ways the way that can be stated. Next, we can set a border for our table. Let's set the border to 1 pixel, and you can increase this value for a thicker border, and you put 0 for no border. So we can also put a border color attributes. It was set that blue. Next, we can specify the cell spacing and cell padding attributes. The illustration provides a visual illustration of what each of these mean. The cell padding will define the amount of space around the cell contents. The cell spacing on the other hand will determine the amount of space between each cell in the table. The unit of measurement for cell spacing and the cell padding is also a pixel. Once we have defined these attributes, we can start adding rows in columns. Each row is defined by an open and closing TRT4 table rules. I will create one row to begin with, and inside each row I can create any number of the columns. So our table had two columns, and the column is represented by the opening and closing tag. You can inserting the content inside the opening close. So first part of our table was heading. So that's the what I the first rule will look like. I will insert the second rule, and again each row has two columns. Just enter some data inside these columns. I made a mistake there, so remember the first column was the spot, and we will put spot label in each of the first column and then the responses in each of the second column. I am just copying and pasting. I am just changing the spot label, also the data, and there it is. That's all the rows in column for this particular table. So with the table created, let's save this file and preview it in our web browser to see the final result. And that's what the table looks like. One thing you may have noticed is the table is the full width of the browser content area, and this is because we specified table 1 of the 100 pixel. You will notice as if we change the size of the browser window, that the table expands and contracts, and always maintain the 100% of the browser window. Now let's see what would happen if we change the width to 50%. So go back to the source code, just change the width to the 50% and then refresh the page. Now we can see that the table always maintains 50% the browser content area. So with the percentage base, with the table will always expand and contrast to maintain that percentage, the specified percentage of the browser content area. But what if we want the table to be a fixed width so it doesn't expand or contract with the browser window? For that we will need to change the width from a percentage to the fixed value. So let's go ahead and change the value from the 50% to 500 now. If you don't specify percentage, that convert the table width into a pixel base. The table width to a 500 pixel will be the new width of this table. So we are going to save the file, and I'm just going to reload the web browser. And now you will notice that no matter how big or small the browser window is, the table always stays at 500 pixels. In the last lecture, we explored how to create a basic table. Now we will see how the table width behaves when one table is nested into any other table. So if a table is placed within any other table, it's referred to as a nested table. A table containing the nested table is referred to as a parent table. Let's start by creating any other table in our existing document that has one row in our one column. We will start with the open table tag, and we will set the width to 100% to begin with. Apply one pixel border, and we will set the border color to red so we can distinguish our parent table from the nested table. We will close our open table tag, and now we will create the single row in a single column. So now that we have the table created, we want to nest our original table into our new created parent table. So we have to do this very carefully. We need to copy this entire block of code from the closest table tag right up to the open table tag in on our original table. We are going to right click and cut this block of code and paste it inside within the td tags on our new table. So right click and paste. I am just going to do a little bit of formatting so it's help us stay organized. Just highlight all the table rows and columns. You can if you position your cursor here and hold the shift key and click at the end of the area you want to highlight, it highlights the entire block of code, and then you can just indent by using the tag. Okay, so that just helps us stay a little bit more organized. Before we go any further, let's save our file and preview this in our web browser to make sure that everything is working correctly. And so now we can see the present table the identifiable by the red border and the nested table with the blue border. So currently our parent table is 100% and our nested table is 500 pixels. So for that reason the parent table is taking up the full width of the content area of the web browser, and the nested table is fixed will add up 500 pixels. Now let's try a couple of different scenarios to see what's happened when we adjust the width of the nested table relevant to the parent. So the first thing of all do is we will change the width of the nested table to 50% rather than 500 pixels. Now save your changes and refresh the browser window. Now we can see as we expand and contract the browser window, our nested table is always occupy 50% of the present table. It all change in the wake of the parent table to the 80%. Refresh and now the table is 18% of full of the content area of the browser window, and the nested table is a 50%. The parent table is a little bit confusing. but with the width of brackets, you will get the hang of. You notice that as you expand and contract the browser window, the nested table always stay at 50% of the parent table width. This time will make the parent table 600 pixels and the nested table is 100 pixels. So this time the parent table is face about 600 pixels and the nested table is 100% of the 600 pixels. So here you can see the width setting of the nested in parent table will affect the way the table is displayed in your browser.
Like, subscribe and press the bell icon of Getsitement for future updates.